Hello and welcome to another live stream event. Today we're talking about saving lives at sea with Coastguard New Zealand. I'm delighted to welcome onto the stream. We have a direct live link to the Operations Centre in Auckland, New Zealand, and we've got Ray, who's the Operations Centre Manager. Hi, Ray. And Nico, who is Technology Analyst and Support at Coastguard New Zealand. So, guys, thanks for joining on the live stream.
Pleasure.
Oh, excellent. So well, let's do a quick intro before we look at the room you're in, just to explain for people where we're all at. New Zealand. So we're currently, it's nighttime here in Europe. You guys, it's early morning. Are you around here somewhere? Here we go. And you can see the guys are in the North Island, I think, right in Auckland. And I think I've got this right on your building.
Perfect. That's us.
How's that? So this is, tell me about the operations center in Auckland.
So as you can see in the background there, that's the beautiful Auckland city. The round building there is the Auckland Marine Rescue Centre Trust. So there's a number of organisations in this building. There's Coastguard New Zealand. We've got Surf Lifesaving, who we work closely with. We have our local harbour master here for the city, and we've also got a police maritime unit that operates out of the building as well. So there's only two dedicated police maritime units in New Zealand, one in Auckland and one in Wellington. The rest of the country, we work with police on a smaller, lower scale. So the operations centre that you can see in the background is operated 24 hours a day. We have 2 to 3 paid staff working on shifts that time, and on the weekends we've got about 55 to 60 volunteers that support us by giving up their precious time on the weekends in the busier times. So obviously on the weekends it gets busier, and during the week not so.
And that's because it's busiest at those times. Is that you bring in the volunteers to supplement?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we've got a population in Auckland 1.6 out of total of 5 million for the country, and as you saw there, as you zoomed in on Google Maps, it's not a big distance between the east coast of Auckland and the west coast. The west coast is a bit of the Wild West with the conditions that they experience and the harbours and things that they need to cross to get out to. So that does pose some challenges for boaties, which we respond to.
And so we'll go back in a minute to sort of what makes up your control room, but the view it's right behind you. You can see the windows. I assume that's these circular windows here. You have a great view, and I think you could even see it was the America's Cup is in Auckland Bay out those windows last summer.
Yeah, it comes right. They come right past the door, the window here to go to the race courses. So that was pretty cool to be able to see them, and also to see them practicing. We've got a good opportunity to get some insight into that, which is
the best see. So it's winter there at the moment. So anyone who's in the northern hemisphere, we're in summer. I'm obviously in Europe at the moment. We have a lot of viewers on from the United States and Canada as well at the moment. We're all in summer. You guys are in winter, and it's Tuesday morning. So it's a quiet time, I'd imagine.
Yeah, very quiet. So just looking at our log now, so far today we have logged 3 reports. So very, very, very quiet. And most of those would be commercial vessels. I can see one here in Tauranga, and that's the school bus on the water that goes and picks kids up and takes them to an island there.
Across the water.
So very, very quiet. But you contrast that to a nice busy summer's day, and at our peak we can sort of take up to, every 12 seconds there'll be a radio call or a phone call coming in for us to take.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, excellent. So this is going to be a fascinating live stream, and I can see we have a lot of viewers in. You're welcome to ask questions. We're live at the moment. You can ask questions on YouTube in the comments, on Facebook if you're watching it there, on LinkedIn if you're watching it there, or on Twitter, Periscope, any of those platforms. Just press reply or enter into the comments you see below this live stream, and they come up on screen here, and I can ask the questions directly to the guys. So please do participate. It's what makes it very interesting. So what channels or methods of communication are you listening out for an emergency? I'm guessing channel 16 is internationally where you are as well.
Yeah, so we implemented a year or two back technology called Wave, which is a Motorola platform, and that's the same as what the Maritime Operations Centre operates for Maritime New Zealand. So they look after channel 16. Previously, we were only able to do our Coastguard channels and the local channel 16 in Auckland, which was pretty much an aerial sticking up on the roof. But now that we have that technology, we can listen to channel 16 throughout the whole country. Obviously, the Maritime New Zealand do their thing for channel 16 down in Wellington, but we are able to listen to that now, which is an advantage to us, because if something starts happening on channel 16, we can start preparing a response if we needed to, whereas before we were in the dark with it. So that's the screens, and the bottom two screens, if you can see behind me there, is the Wave technology. So that we've got our own VHF network right across the whole country. There are areas that we were still working on to put more in, but it all comes in here at night and then locally throughout the country.
Yeah, and so you can listen to any mast in the country, is that, or broadcast from? Yeah, excellent. So a digital network across that, and you hinted at there, all of the operations moved to Auckland in the evening.
That's correct, for the whole country. Yeah, there's the odd pocket too that still do some of their own ones, volunteers, but we do have the technology and the ability to be able to do that should they choose to hand it to us. Okay,
excellent. We're getting a smiley emoji in here from Josie Drew. Hi, thanks for watching, Josie. You've got this regional setup of control rooms. It changes day and night to where people are. What at the moment? What's happening behind you? Who's in the room? What roles do you have? What would they be doing?
So we have two roles. So we have the duty officer, which is Carolyn, sitting right here. So Carolyn's in charge of the room. So hopefully she won't kick us out if something happens. But so the duty officer manages the incident when they're happening, whether that's a breakdown, whether it's a serious incident, medicals, whatever it might be. So they oversee the whole operation. And today over here we have Andrea, who's one of our radio operators, both been with us for quite some time. Both come through as volunteers from a volunteer pool to become paid staff members, so bring a lot of experience. If there's an incident, and having the police maritime unit in the same building, they would be the incident controller of the incident. We command our assets, so we look after our assets. So whether that's rescue watercraft, known as jet skis, or two aircraft. We've got two aircraft, Cessna 182s.
I think I've got a photo here. I can bring this up. Tell me about the aircraft. Are these being flown by volunteers as well, or are they full-time
Correct.
staff?
So they go out on the weekends doing patrols, and that's the Auckland-based one. So predominantly would get tasked to some sort of incident in the summer, even if they just do patrol training flights. So often they get, and we've got one in Northland as well, another Cessna 182 in Northland. They don't do as many jobs, but equally as important for the role that they play. Often first eyes on incident.
Yeah, it's fairly unique. I know certainly in North America they've Casara in terms of a volunteer aviation effort, but it's fairly unique to me in Europe anyway. Is the Coast Guard overseeing the training and qualifications and validating the pilots and crew, or is it just an outside piece that a local group have brought as a speciality?
No, so all our pilots have a commercial pilot's license from CAA, so Civil Aviation Authority. So that we don't train pilots; they come to us as qualified pilots. What we do is when they come to us, we give them the Coast Guard qualification. So we teach them about search techniques and things like that. So we give them that. We give them that training to be able to operate the aircraft. So they have 3 roles in the aircraft. Obviously, the most important one is the pilot, and then equally we have a
I think we lost them. They'll be back here now. Apologies, guys. We lost you there for a minute. I think you're back.
Yep.
You can hear us okay?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So sorry, you cut off at the point you say that the trained pilots come to you and you're teaching them about search techniques and how to interact with the Coast Guard and be a Coast Guard part of the response.
Yeah, and then we have two other roles in the aircraft, which is in-flight coordinator, who kind of coordinates what they're doing, and then either one or two observers sitting in the back of the aircraft helping with the searching.
And so they go out on proactive patrol. They're out in the air anyway, or will they launch for an incident as well?
Yeah, so they'll either be in the air training or on standby at the base, and they can deploy in 8 or 9 minutes if an incident comes up that we need them for.
Brilliant. So we were talking there at that point.
See the registration of the aircraft.
It's really annoying.
We were talking there at that point about the control room and kind of the setup, and I think this is a fairly current picture of your screens and desk, and actually we can see out the window here in this as well, so you can see that brilliant view. What's going on the different screens? So we have the wave comm system, yeah.
The bottom two screens is the wave technology, which is all our radio communications. And then on the left screen there is Track Plus, which all our assets have tracking on them, either through GSM or satellite. GSM is obviously a lot cheaper for us. And if they go out of GSM, they can bump into satellite. We do pay a higher rate for the satellite reports. The middle screen should be clear to what that is.
You've aircraft and vessels on that screen.
Yeah, and also the rescue helicopters that operate in New Zealand that aren't Coast Guard assets, they're other organisations. They have Track Plus as well. So if they're involved on an incident that we can see them as well.
Yeah, I do. I spot D4H on the middle screen, and I didn't actually expect to see that there because I thought it was an older photo. But yeah, you've recently moved over, or are in the process of moving your operations center to D4H. It's interesting to see it there on the middle screen.
You can go, Nico, on that one.
Yeah, and it has revolutionised the way we run incidents in this centre. Prior to D4H, we used to use paper logs, and it was just a nightmare with, as you can see, the ops centre is kind of divided into 2 lanes, you could call them. And you'd have operators on the left there taking radio calls, and we could have operators on the right on the telephone or on other frequencies like UHF. And you're constantly just running bits of paper around. So that middle screen is revolutionary for sort of how we run our jobs, and that it's all on. Everybody has access to all the information they need, and we can coordinate effectively.
So from the little bit of time I've spent with you, my understanding is a new call comes in, or a distress message of some type, or an inquiry of some type, and you instantly start a new incident in D4H, and everybody's able to see what's going on as it's being entered on the call.
Absolutely. So I was on duty on the Saturday just gone, and we had a phone call come in for a distress job. The operator hit the add button, started filling in the details, and everybody else in the room could see that information coming in real time. And before the operator had even hung up, we already had assets on the way and had briefed police and had the incident well underway, just because we had that visibility of what was going on.
Excellent. And then do you use the log as well? I can see a log open on the right-hand side.
Yes, absolutely. So the log, there's a log per incident, and that's just where we record all the comings and goings and which assets are tasked and who's responding.
Brilliant. No, it looks great. You've got a couple of other databases as well, and I see a screen on the right. What's involved in that?
So that little red screen is our trip reporting system. So it's a product we've developed in-house, where if a vessel calls and wants to log a trip report, which is a voyage plan, where they tell us where they are, where they're going, and how many people on board, and also what time they expect to return. We'll stick that all into the system, and it just gives all our operators access to that information. That's also integrated into our app. So you can download the New Zealand Coastguard app on Androids or iPhones, and you can log your trip report in the app as well.
Okay, brilliant. On the whole, there's a row of screens up higher then. Are these different seat layouts and times? Is it tide times, or what are we looking at?
Yes, there's a lot of information up there. That screen on the very left-hand side is pretty much the state of the ops room. So we'll put the names of all the operators at each station and what channels they have been assigned. Because what typically will happen is, at the moment, it's very quiet. As I said before, I think we're up to 5 calls now, but it's still very, very quiet. On a busy weekend day, we'll divvy up the channels. So we might have one volunteer watching, for example, the Manukau channel, and another one might be looking after the Bay of Islands. So we'll write down all their names and what they're watching. We have a list of all our assets up there and their availability. So if there's any that are unavailable for maintenance reasons, for example, we have our nowcasting. So it's a bunch of wind sites that Coastguard has provisioned around the country, and we can see what the actual the live conditions are. So we see the average wind speeds, the gusts, and the direction.
Yeah.
And then that third screen is just Track Plus, or we quite often have a weather monitoring system up there as well.
Okay, excellent. So when you do task assets out and they go, you've sent through a couple of photos here of some of the assets. That looks like one of your larger ships, is that right? Or vessels?
That's the 15-metre catamaran that's line foundation rescue. So that's based here at Auckland. So the 2 largest ones is that one and another 15-metre mono, which resides here as well. But they range in anything from the rescue watercraft, which is a jet ski, up to the size. Most common size is around the 9 to 10 metre is a predominant size, but in all locations around New Zealand they do differ. So we've got 63 units, Coastguard units around the country and communities, and we respond to about 3,500 calls for assistance per year, and we bring about 6,000 people home. Remember, that's done by 2,000 odd volunteers, so we don't have people sitting on the water in boats ready to go. They need to be activated either out of bed, out of work, or out of home to go and do all this work that they do. So it's a great thing that they do.
Yeah, excellent. So how does a rescue proceed? Do you pick just the nearest asset? Do you put that call out to multiple bases or stations? How would you go about responding to a call? What's typical?
Really depends on the location, and if it happened in Auckland in the Harrington Gulf outside our window today, we probably have the benefit of activating a number of units. But if it happens on the west coast, South Island, out of Greymouth, we've only got one asset there for that job, or in the far north at Hohora, up at the top of the North Island, we've only got one asset there available. We've got neighbouring units that we could activate, but there would potentially be a delay. So really does depend on where it is. And because of those serious ones that we work with police, they may send other assets. So they may choose to send a rescue helicopter or other assets as well. And surf lifesaving, we've got communities where we both work together in the same town.
Gotcha. I can see in this picture now, I know your specialities is the operations center, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the different vessels if you can in any way. I can see everybody's on comms on this boat. They've all got headsets and mics on. Is that common across the same type of vessel?
It's starting to grow in popularity. So that's a 9.5 metre vessel, that one. So that's the more traditional size. That one's a little bit unique. That's got a diesel jet. Traditionally they're twin out, so that one's a little bit different. But yeah, the comms that they have there, that's increasing in popularity, just so everybody knows what's going on, rather than just the person that's operating the radio on the vessel. Maybe the only person that actually can hear or knows what's being communicated outside of the vessel.
And what kind of roles would be held now? Who are we looking at? So there's a coxswain or helm. Is that the title you'd use?
Yeah, so they have a number of qualifications. So we have our own training framework, which is approved by Maritime New Zealand. So that allows us to issue what's called an industry-specific certificate. So that's our own qualification, but it has been approved by Maritime New Zealand. So we have a master, that's in charge and responsible for the vessel and the safety of everybody on board. And then we have other crews like operational crew and then more senior crews as well. So they go through it's a comprehensive program and assessments, and then they become qualified to carry out those roles. Just because you haven't done helm qualification it doesn't necessarily mean you can't drive the boat, but you will be put in there to train, because you have to train to get to that qualification anyway. So.
Gotcha. And in terms of there's kind of medical care being provided at the stern there. What kind of training is it? First aid or a higher level that you provide crews, or how do they provide that care?
It's just first aid. So we are first aid responders. Some of our volunteers in their working life work for St. John as paramedics. So they're good people to have on certain jobs, but primarily first aid, get people safe, and then return them to a high level of medical treatment.
Yeah, very good. Is this the typical PPE that'll be worn? Sort of a life jacket without inherent buoyancy, and they're not in dry suits or anything like that. Is this what would normally be worn, or is it a summer and winter kit that they'd those troops there, they're wearing overalls, so that again that's growing in popularity. In the South Island they have other suits, so they're starting to use dry suits because obviously it's colder down there. But those life jackets are the common ones that we have. Okay, excellent. It's fascinating to see it in operation here. I think people are interested. So there's a couple of questions coming in. Let's see here. So if you can see that on the screen as well. How do you coordinate with RCCNZ? Is that you might explain who that is for everybody?
Yep, so that's the Rescue Coordination Centre in New Zealand. So Category 1 incidents are controlled or coordinated by police, and Category 2 incidents are coordinated by the Rescue Coordination Centre in New Zealand. So we have direct lines to both of those organisations. If it's here, we have an advantage that the police come upstairs. If it's anywhere else in the country, we have direct lines of contact with the
What's
police.
Category 1, Category 2, just to explain for people?
Yeah, so Category 1 is that's how they categorise the incidents for New Zealand search and rescue effectively. So that's a police-controlled incident, and Category 2 would be a rescue coordination centre one. The RCC ones are traditionally bigger incidents or more offshore, so anything outside our 12 nautical mile limit, or a beacon activation. So as with any other coordination centre around the world, they deal with the beacon activations, whether it's a low person or an EPIRB on a boat.
So RCCNZ is Maritime New Zealand. Is that the organisation?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Interesting. I think Simon, if I have the right person, I recognise the name, and I think is lifeboat crew in the UK I guess, but feel free to correct me, Simon. I think you're on an independent lifeboat somewhere in the UK. Ed Davey, how would you activate your remote asset? Is it pagers, mobile alerting, text messages? What are you doing? Or are they all different?
It is a little bit different. Primarily it's pages, although we are likely to lose that paging ability in the next few years. We use Active 911 as an app, to phones, but through here with a lot of units, they actually get both. So we can send out of our iPage, we can activate to a unit that will activate their pager and Active 911. Other units, it's a phone tree that we have to phone because of their location. So it does vary quite a bit.
So Active 911 will send a critical notification on the mobile device to the user. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, excellent.
About the response as well. So an Active 911, it's a push notification to say something's going on. It'll list all the crew, and the crew can vote on what their response capability is. So whether they're responding to the base with an ETA of 20 minutes, if they're available on call, or if they're unavailable. And you also get to see a map of where all the volunteers are, so you can estimate quite accurately how long it's going to take to get the vessel on the water.
And can you see that in the operation center?
We can do.
Excellent. Okay. I was close here. Simon was also ex-HM Coastguard Operations Room, and now Marine Life Rescue. Okay, brilliant. So that's interesting, the paging, for sure. Let's take a look through some of these photos. So yeah, it's interesting to see the equipment and all the different vessels. How often would they train, or is there a requirement to be on the water?
It really depends on the level of activity. So a lot of the Auckland-based units do a lot more training, but they actually do a lot of training by default because they're out there doing a higher number of incidents.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of units meet on a regular basis. It could be once, one night a week, once a fortnight, or once a month. So they get together in their communities at their base and they do training. They do on-water training. But yeah, they do have to keep their skill set up. So there's nothing compulsory per se for the amount of time that they have to keep doing their training once qualified. But you know, the expectation is that they do keep their skills up.
So remind me how many stations there were?
63.
63, and all have vessels or multiple vessels. So
2 of those operations centres, so like this one here and one down in Mount Maunganui, and the other 2 are the air assets. So that's the 2 air patrols, and then the remaining other wet assets.
Okay, very good. It's great seeing it and seeing the pictures to illustrate it. It's really interesting. Okay, there's a couple more questions coming in here. Let's see. We'll bring us up bigger, and let's see here what we have. So, have your types of incidents changed during the pandemic? Well, what pandemic in New Zealand?
Nothing to see here. It kind of it did in our lockdowns. So that 15-meter catamaran that you saw earlier
when you got one case, yeah.
So Waiheke Island is quite a populated island. It's about 10 miles from the base here, give or take. So there were a number of medivacs that needed to be carried out, and that was it was an interesting time for the crew because they had to kit up in their PPE and their masks and disposable coveralls and gloves and all that sort of stuff. St. John paramedics would go out with the crew, bring the person back, and then they'd go off to hospital. The vessel had to be cleaned down, ready for the next deployment. So boaties weren't allowed to go on the water in lockdown.
Okay.
Levels that changed, and then it opened up.
I'll try my local knowledge. It's like a bit of a touristy island with a hotel and some like venues and stuff on there. Is that right? Or have I? Island?
I might get in trouble for saying it. Probably 30, 40 years ago, it was the hippies, but now there's some quite wealthy people that reside there.
Okay.
It's
nice island.
Yeah, it's a beautiful island, and it's quite big. Like I don't know what the population is, 4,000 or 5,000 people probably on the island, so it's a decent sized island.
Very good.
A lot of people live there and commute to Auckland by ferry to work. So
typically we see our incidents, roughly 10% would be search and rescue. So sort of 1 in every 10 calls would be an emergency call of some kind. During the pandemic, when we were in lockdown, that jumped to about 60% being emergency calls, and the rest being tow jobs and routine things.
Excellent. So I think John is actually with the Channel Islands Air Search and Rescue, which were on a previous live stream with us. And so similar operation of flying volunteers, flying the aircraft like that too. They're supporting HM Coast Guard, I believe. And the Channel Islands and Jersey Coast Guard in what they're doing. But it's interesting that overlap, the planes for both. So to me, it's quite unique that you have volunteers in the operations center. Are they already members of units that they come in and help?
Some are. I mean, we do actively recruit all the time because volunteer turnover is a thing for us. The life cycle or the time that they give has changed. It's shorter now than it used to be. So the I have been to events where we've given out awards for volunteers that have done 50 years with the organisation. I think there was one just recently for 60, which a long time to be volunteering, but that landscape has changed for us volunteers. People move around the country for work or for family or house affordability, whatever it might be. And so it does change quite a bit.
But it's another avenue of volunteering as well for people that might not want to go on boats. So we've got a lot of people that are interested in working the radio. They might not have any maritime experience at all. So when I started as a volunteer, I think the only on-water experience I had was a jet boat ride to Waiheke. But started as a volunteer, and through our training programs, you learn all the maritime stuff you need to know to be a good radio operator.
Yeah. And so what's that training look like? I mean, okay, if I started in volunteering at the operations center, I mean, what do I go? Is there a structure to that? Is there levels of responsibility? What would I do if I came in as a new volunteer to the operations center?
So the bulk of what a volunteer does is trip reports. On an average shift in summer, you might log 200-300 calls from vessels telling you where they're going. So that's where the training pretty much starts. So you'll come in for a one-day classroom session where we go over all the theory and show you how the system works. And then for 6 weeks, we'll get you to come in one night a week. And that's practical sort of role play using the systems that we use. And to get you to the point where you can log a routine trip report where there's nothing too fancy or tricky going on. Then we pretty much throw you in the deep end and you start taking live calls. But for a 3-month period, you have a buddy or a mentor. So you'll be on a channel taking live calls from vessels, but you'll have a qualified operator next to you monitoring your screen and just making sure everything's going okay. And then after that, you're a fully qualified radio operator. So that's about 4 months into your Coastguard career. And you work
Coastguard career as a volunteer. Just so
as a volunteer.
People are joining us in the middle here. These are people volunteering their time to work in the operations center. Right. So sorry. Back to that 4 months in, and they're working. They're taking distress calls there. And what are they doing? What's the emergency phone number? I assume you get a lot of small boats phoning in.
So we have a star 500 in New Zealand is a number you can call to get straight through to Coastguard from your mobile phone. And then the general emergency number 111. That goes to police, and then the police will pass the information to us. But that volunteer who's finished the 4 months of training, they would come in for their shift. They do about once a month. They would come in and do a 6-hour shift. They'll be assigned a particular channel, or potentially multiple channels. If it's the beauty of the operations centre is we can multitask. So rather than having 21 radio operators sitting at bases taking 5 calls a day, we can have one operator looking after 4 of those channels. And once you've been assigned those channels, it's pretty much your job to deal with whatever comes in. So that might be the trip reports, your radio checks, and then suddenly a mayday call that you need to answer and coordinate. Okay,
brilliant. More questions here. I'll throw it up. This is coming from Michael Williams, who's watching on YouTube. The ratio of paid staff to volunteer staff. So I think let's talk about the controls, the operations center first. I keep calling it the control center. The operations center. What's a busy day? How many volunteers versus full-time paid staff?
So we would have on a weekend probably 2 to 3 paid staff, and we would have in the busy peak of the day, which is around the middle, could be 6 or 7 volunteers helping in the operations centre.
Wow, so that's a busy room.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. For all that ratio, there's 11 rostered staff, so they're the ones that fill the shifts and do the 24/7 watch, and then they are supplemented by, I think we're up to 70 volunteers who come in and fill those extra seats. Usually weekends, public holidays, or if there's any special events, or you get some odd weekdays that it's really, really good weather and people decide to call a sickie, and we'd page for backup and get volunteers in as well.
Okay, wow. Outside of the operations center, what does the full-time staff structure look like versus volunteer?
I won't tell you the exact number. I was just trying to think about that when that question popped up. I would say it's around about 60. So compared to, well, that would be maximum 60. So compared to 2,000 volunteers, we only have 60 staff to do all the other functions. So as a charity, we fundraising is important, marketing is important, well, it's all important, operational, IT, and education. So we do a lot of public education to try and reduce the numbers of incidents that we respond to. So that's a big part of what we do as well. So there's lots of stuff going on outside of the coalface of doing operational stuff.
What about on the operational side in terms of training, overseeing sort of those training structures and qualifications and frameworks? What, how many people work on that side?
How many's in there?
So we've got a national training team at the moment of 2, and they're supplemented by a bunch of paid instructors. So these are usually very experienced volunteers who get a adult education qualification, and then we bring them on as instructors, and they're the ones that actually go out and teach all the content.
Ideal. Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you for the question, Michael. Here's another one in. We're getting busy now. Do the trip reports generate a response if the vessel does not report as completed or is overdue?
Generally, no. So a trip report, what a trip report does is that it's a voyage, it's an intent. So you're leaving here, you're going there, and you expect to be back there at a certain time. So what that does is it gives a breadcrumb trail of your expected voyage for generally to say, if you are reported overdue and you have logged a trip report, bearing in mind it's not compulsory to do that, that would be where the police or if the RCC were involved and us, that's where we would start searching or start putting resources. We do have a different system for what I talked about, the West Coast or any bar crossing, so a river bar or a harbour bar, so they're quite dangerous. So we put a bar watch on through the ops platform or the trip reporting system. I use the Manukau bar as an example on the West Coast out of Auckland. So they would leave the Manukau harbour, relatively safe, go over a bar that can be dangerous. They would log a bar watch with us, and then after 30 minutes, if they hadn't called, that automatically sets an alarm off in the trip reporting system. That doesn't necessarily generate tasking volunteers in an asset, but it does start our search and rescue procedures. So we might do an all-station broadcast on the VHF. When we go into our database to see if we've got a phone number, and we can start doing some things. And other vessels may and have responded to the VHF calls that we make because there are other vessels in the area. And sometimes it results in the aircraft going or rescue vessels going. So we don't do nothing, but there's a step process before we activate.
With the Coastguard app, there's another layer there in that the app will track you throughout your journey. So every couple of minutes we'll get a ping from your phone, and that's entered into the database. And for every trip that you log in the app, you nominate an emergency contact. As soon as you go overdue, we'll send you a push notification to say, hey, you're overdue, what's going on? If we still can't get hold of you after 90 minutes, a text message is sent to your emergency contact. And that basically just starts the process from the family point of view or the friends point of view, and they can call people that they knew were on the vessel and make sure that everything's okay. And then ultimately, if there's any cause for concern, that emergency contact will contact us, and then we start search and rescue action from that point.
Makes sense. Okay, Simon has another question here. Do the ops room generate search patterns, plans, drift calculations, and coordinate the assets, or do the local boat stations manage that once a job is allocated to them? Interested, your description of a radio operator seems to not cover SAR planning.
Yeah, so it's a bit different. Again, it's a bit different. Depends on where you end up in the country. So if it was here, the operations centre doesn't necessarily generate the search pattern. We will give the assets an area to go and search, we might recommend the type of search that we want them to carry out because of the type of incident. It'll be different for a person that's fallen off a ferry or a boat to anything else. So we don't necessarily give them the actual plan, and we work with the Rescue Coordination Centre and here the Police Maritime Unit to get the SAD, which is a search area determination. So they calculate that for us. So and within minutes they can have that to us, depending on if it's a person in the water, a vessel, or whatever, and by location. So, but in a smaller community, it may just be the local Coastguard volunteers that are doing it, working with police, and we can support them from here in any shape or form that they need.
And that track software on one of Carolyn's screens earlier also helps with that, and that you can plot, you can put markers down for last known positions, and you can plan searches and track assets and all that sort of fun.
Excellent. Well, it's been a fascinating insight into what you do. We've had great viewership and loads of questions throughout this. It's been brilliant. It's quite unique that you're doing this live from the operations center, and it's great seeing it all going on in the background there for real. So thank you. Is there anything else you guys would like to add? Have I missed anything you'd like to communicate, or very glad to hear more.
When the borders open up, come and visit.
Yep, absolutely.
Be there for sure. So listen, thank you so much again. I think everybody's appreciated that. We've had, as I said, great viewership throughout. So what we'll do is we'll call it at that. If you'd like to listen back to this, you can hear it on our podcast, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. This video is on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you want to search for it and find it, you'll get it there. And do subscribe, press follow on our YouTube channel so you get notified of the next event we have coming up. I believe we've actually another New Zealand episode on Thursday. It'd be Friday morning New Zealand, Thursday evening here, Thursday afternoon North America. We've got another. We're talking about. You just had 1 in 100-year floods? Would that be right? Possibly, I think South Island we're going to have a chat to. So there's loads of thanks coming in here, and I think everyone's really enjoyed that. So see everyone else on Thursday. Ray, Nico, thank you again. It was great chatting with you.
Robin, thanks to D4H for the work that you do with us and the ease of adaptability whenever we have majority of the requests met. So it's been great working with D4H, and we will continue to.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Alrighty.